Josh Burns, at the heart of this, it's not anti-Semitic to criticise the Netanyahu government, is it?
Absolutely not. And I think you've seen Israelis demonstrate on the streets in greater numbers than we've seen many Australian demonstrations, and it is a vibrant democracy and one where there is fierce disagreements. We were talking before the show about how if you sit around a table, especially at a Jewish dinner, you're going to have a lot of disagreement, and politics, trust me, the community lets me know when they disagree with me. It happens fairly often, David, but I think, yeah, it's part of the proud Jewish tradition of debate and challenging each other intellectually.
Let me ask you this. Some Jewish Australians even argue that the Israeli government and its actions is contributing to the rise in anti-Semitism here. Would you agree with that view?
I think it's a very dangerous equation and a very dangerous thing to put those two things together because, as was articulated before, no matter what happens or no matter what the Israeli government does, you cannot hold responsible Jewish Australians for whatever your views are of that action. And Bondi is the most horrific example of those people who went to Bondi. They were there to express their Judaism, their Jewishness. They weren't there to express solidarity or agreement with one particular policy of the Israeli government. It was the last thing on their mind. It was a celebration of Jewish tradition and culture. And I think that's what needs to be protected. And you cannot blame the Jewish people in Australia for what your views might be of another foreign government. You wouldn't blame the Chinese community for the actions of what you think the Chinese government might do. You wouldn't blame the United States community here, the expat community, for what you might feel the United States government is doing. It's just wrong and it's dangerous, and I've seen people even in my own political organisation draw that comparison, and it's really dangerous.
Well, let me ask you about some of the, I guess, harder parts of this debate, where things have become particularly heated. The accusation of genocide. The UN Human Rights Council's Commission of Inquiry did conclude that genocide has occurred in Gaza. It's being looked at still by the International Court of Justice. I'm not asking any of you to offer a judgment on that, but the debate about genocide, how does that impact on Jewish Australians and yourself?
Well, it's a classic example of what are people attributing to Jewish Australians. And for me, I see the commentary online that somehow, I support the killing of Palestinian kids and families when it just couldn't be further from the truth. And my family, my grandfather, the conflict was a big part of his life, and he left because he didn't want to raise his son in and amongst that conflict. It was one of the most heartbreaking decisions of his life. And I think you can have multiple truths at the same time, but to somehow attribute, Jewish Australians with this intent that you want to see the death and destruction of another people, it's just flat out wrong. And I'll give you a little story. Bassem Abdo is the Palestinian Member of Parliament who was elected to Calwell at the last election, and he called me after Bondi, and he said, is there a community function I can come and sit with you with? And he said, what do you think about it? And I said, Bass, it's a really beautiful sentiment. There's one at a synagogue in my electorate. It's going to be pretty intense. But I think that, you're a Palestinian man. You're proud of your identity. You care about your community. But you're also an Australian. And to express solidarity with my people in this moment, there's got to be space to do both. And there's got to be space to hold that dialogue between those two people. And he came, and I'll never forget it.
I want to ask you, Josh Burns, you're a member of the Albanese government. You're a prominent member of the Jewish community as well. Your own electorate office was attacked, windows smashed, slogans painted on the windows, fires lit outside. Both professionally and personally, how difficult has this period been for you?
I didn't get into politics to be the Jewish guy, David. I actually care about lots of issues. I'm really lucky to be involved in housing policy at the moment, and that's something I really care about, to help Australians get into a home or buy a home. I don't think any of us picked this moment in these leadership roles where you get thrust into it.
But has it been difficult for you to balance, I guess, the fact that you are both a member of this government but also a member of this Jewish community, and we've seen the friction between the two?
It's more than that. It's been a tearing of my own identity. I'm a Labor person. People, many in the Jewish community said, "Oh, why don't you join the Liberals?" Well, I'm not a Liberal. I'm not going to get into politics tonight, but I believe in the institution of the Australian Labor Party, and but I'm also a proud Jewish Australian, and you know, I wear a Star of David around with me all the time.
Do you have it on tonight?
I do. It's in there. I don't want to show my Jewish chest hair, but it's a part of who I am. But
do you ever take that off, or ever hide it? I suppose.
I never used to, but there's certainly been moments where, more recently, I've sort of made the choice of, like, you know, how much emotional energy do I have right now to deal with whatever might come my way.
What are those sort of moments usually where you're questioning whether you should hide something like that?
Just if you're in a circumstance where you don't know the people around you, and I'm more identifiable these days, and it's one of those dilemmas that being Jewish is who I am, but also being an Australian is who I am, and I think the two need to be in a place where the real litmus test for all of this, David, is not, you know, how high our school walls can be or how many guards we can put in, because I've been involved in a lot of that security funding and policy work. It's actually how little people have to care about whether or not they're wearing something that identifies who they are.
Well, let me just get some final thoughts from both of you about what needs to happen, and not just what government needs to do, but I suppose what we all need to do here. Josh?
Well, for the last 2 years, yeah, Alex is right, it's been this sort of incident of anti-Semitism government response, and I've been involved in so much of it, where, you know, neo-Nazis march, you you put in legislation to outlaw it. You know, people are chanting, you try and put in vilification laws. It's been done around the States. People were protesting outside synagogues. All of this sort of stuff has happened, and then response.
Was the response always fast enough?
Oh, clearly not, right? And you have to be humble about all of this. But the more difficult job that we all have isn't just how high the walls are. It's actually the cultural reckoning of our country of, you know, as was beautifully expressed before, Australia's been a safe haven for the Jewish community, and what it's given all of our families is something that it just means so much, and we love sharing this country and contributing to it. And I think, you can build more walls, you can protect more schools, you can, arm more people, but what's much harder, and what conversations like tonight are so important, is about, well, how do we actually talk to each other, how do we understand each other, and how do we share this amazing country?